Yous caught me. Now yous all know where I get me knowledge of old Dublin. From the wonderful second-hand books I buy in the Ivy Market in the Liberties. I love this old spot in Dublin, where I can get a fine view of the Liberties. Not only can I see one liberty, I can see 7 liberties. The liberty of St. John outside Newgate, where I'm standing. And further up the street, the liberty of Thomas's Court in Dunor. And here in front of me, St. Audience, the Tailors' Hall, in the Lord Mayor's liberty, and a piece of the Lord Mayor's wall. And behind that, the spire of Christ Church, who also had a liberty. And across on the left, the green dome of the Four Courts, the site the Dominicans came to in 1224, 3 years after the death of St. Dominic, to the liberty of St. Mary's Abbey. And of course, the 6th and 7th liberty is down here on my right, the spire of Patrick's Cathedral, which brings to my mind the liberty of the Archbishop of St. Sepulchre's and the liberty of the Dean and Chapter of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Francis Street. You know, it was outside the walls of old Dublin, and yet it's strange, it wasn't in the liberty of St. John, it wasn't in the liberty of Thomas's Court in Dunor, it wasn't in the Archbishop's liberty, nor it wasn't in the Dean's liberty. But the bulk of it belonged to a man by the name of Ralph Porter, and he was the man responsible for the Franciscan foundation that gives its name to the street. This brings back memories of Johnny Ray, the halfpenny wafer out of the bucket and the drop of raspberry out of the big bottle. Sure, O'Hara's is nearly as old as Francis Street itself. It's a pity they had to knock down Much Hat's chemist to widen the road. The old Thibault, sure, it was more than a picture house. It was a university where we learned all about the Blue Nile and the White Nile and Stanley and Livingston and things that we never learned in the schoolroom. That's where we used to queue there, up along the laneway there, and the usher with his belt off, beating us back, and we all clutching our fourpence and our Irish. Dublin has a great tradition of markets. The people always sold in the street. The market used to be down around Patrick Street and Nicholas Street, but Lord Ivy wanted to get them away from the cathedral. Also, they wanted to pull down the slum dwellings there to build houses for the people. So they killed 2 birds with a 1 stone. They pulled down the slums and put up Ivy Trust buildings for the people and built the Ivy Market to get them in off the street and give them a bit of shelter. Now, a lot of people don't realise that the Ivy Market sells new items as well as second-hand items. Trade has gone off a bit nowadays as to what it was during the war and before the war. You wouldn't get into it, you'd be queuing up to get into it. But nowadays it has slackened down. Of course, there's a lot of street traders around the Thomas Street area and the Mead Street area and then the other markets in the vicinity. But the Ivy is still worth a visit. You can get anything from a pair of cowboy boots, a straight pair of cord jeans, or you can get grandad shirts by the thousand. The Ivy is worth a visit any day of the week. The stone heads represents the nations we trade with. You can come down yourself and pick out what head that is and what head your man is. And I see an Indian up there. We must have bought buffaloes off the Indians. And of course there's another one around the corner here who has a very jokative type of a wink. He must have done a queer deal with us. name of this street?
Francis Street. He's got park behind us. No, man, down
How do you
beside
do
him.
it, with a box or a cardboard box?
No, you get a string.
A string.
String
Snare,
and pull it.
and they, when
and
they
the leg
walk
gets
in,
caught in it.
you pull.
Yeah.
Do you ever hear about putting a bit of salt on their tails?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, we used to do that years ago. Did you name him? Did you call him anything?
Joey.
Joey. Are you going to let Joey go?
Yes.
All right, let Joey go.
Here, get him. He's a gas.
You get Joey getting away.
He's on to this school.
He's gone. The Church of St. Nicholas of Myra, Francis Street, stands on the old Franciscan foundation that was started here in the 13th century. The land was given to the Franciscans by Ralph the Porter, and in the year 1236, the Franciscans came here and started their first monastery. Sure, at one time, it was the parish church, not only for the people around here, it was the parish church for the people living on the Isle of Man, because the Isle of Man was in the Archdiocese of St. Nicholas of Myra when it was a pro-cathedral in Dublin. In 1534, Silken Thomas mustered his troops here before marching on Dublin Castle. But the gates of Dublin were closed and he didn't get in. And poor old Silken Thomas and his 5 uncles were hanged, drawn and quartered at Tyburn. Number 50 Francis Street was one time the Archbishop's palace, and he hadn't far to go to his church in those days. Myra House, where Frank Duff founded the Legion of Mary in 1921. I picked up 2 books in the Ivory Market there. One is an ideal in the working about the Magdalen hospitals, and the other one, Walking with Mary, is actually Frank Duff's. Isn't that a coincidence? The 2 books, they were both associations of mercy. That's Frank Duff and Father Thor and the Lady Legionaries celebrating the 1st anniversary of the foundation of the Legion. Mark's Alley West, the one-time residence of the eminent naturalist Caleb Treckeld, the man who compiled the first Irish flora. Just imagine, 252 years ago, a fella living up that street who went out every morning with his notebook and his pencil and possibly his magnifying glass, recording all the flora and coming back then to Mark Alley to record his old book. There's a fair few antique shops in Francis Street where you can get some nice antiques. Of course, antiques nowadays, when I was a kid, they'd be thrown out in the ash bin, stuff that's called antiques today. The clocks there remind me of the four-faced lawyer down in Cork and his brother up at Griffith Barracks on the South Exeter Road. The 4 clocks each telling a different time.
I'm a buxom fine widow, I live in a spot in a Dublin, they call it the Kiln. Me shop and me stall are laid out on the street, and me palace consists of 1 room. At Patrick Street corner for 45 years, sure I've stood there, I'm telling no lie. And while I stood there, nobody would dare to say black was the white of me eye. You may travel from Clare to the county Kildare, from Drogheda right back to McLuhan. But where would you see a fine widow like me? Biddy Mulligan, the pride of the Kiln. Me boys, Biddy Mulligan, the pride of the Kiln.
Blows old sweet shop. Bullseyes, apple flavour, fruit flavour, bomb, and those sweet cans, 10p each. That was the good woman. Give us one of them cans there in the window, please. Give us the sweets as well. Take the 2 of them out of that. They're grand bullseyes, and that'll make a good blacker can, that. Remember the way people used to make milk jugs out of these cans years ago? You have a bullseye or a cola cube. Do you like cola cubes? Take another one. Oh, you have a handful there. Good girl. Moira glass. Of course, Moira gets its name from St. Nicholas of Moira, Francis Street, and the Moira glass works reflects all that is best in Liberty crafts and workmanships. New Row was built on one branch of the Poddle River as it flowed down here into the city of Dublin. Of course, the Poddle River was harnessed by several mills. Old Bush's mill still stands today, despite all the wear and tear, and has the character of being a very sound edifice built to last the centuries. All along here, Mill Street was a hive of mills. There was whiskey, there was calico, there was cotton, there was rope. It's hard to realise that the Poddle River flowed down here. There's not a trace of it today, except at one place up there at Warden Mount, but it's very hard to get it, so that the Poddle can't be seen. But all under these buildings and under these roadways, the old Poddle rolls on like Old Man River, going down there into the Liffey and out into the sea. Do you know, Mill Street isn't the same since the smell of O'Keefe the Knackers is gone. To Dubliners, it was only a smell. But do you know that O'Keefe's were celebrated for their manures? Irish manufacture. For centuries, they were the best and the cheapest. Brabazon Place. Of course, King Henry VIII gave William Brabazon the liberty of Thomas's court in the north, and the Brabazons became the Barons of Ardee and the Earls of Meath. That's how you get the Earl of Meath liberty. This was the dower house of the Brabazon family in the Liberties. Ward's Hill, where Mr. Bullion had his flower gardens and grew the first pineapples in Ireland. There must have been a fair bit of sunshine in Dublin in those days. I'm walking in the footsteps of Zosimus. Michael Morden, the blind ballad singer, who was born in Fadalally in 1794 and died in 1846 in number 14.5 Patrick Street. Well, Zosimus used to say, when I go to me home in Fadalally, I like to go be Fumbley Lane, because the cobblestones on Fumbley Lane are nicer. Now this is Fumbley Lane. Fadalally was off Ducker Lane, but actually the right name of the lane originally was Tucker Lane, called after George Tucker, who was a sheriff of Dublin in 1731. But this is Fumbley Lane, and I'd say that they're the same cobblestones that old Zosimus walked along, tapping his stick, going home after reciting his ballads and his poems up around Smithfield and the Haymarket and up around Patrick Street and Christ Church. Zosimus had a great crowd of friends. In the early days when he was a young man, he had all the old ballad singers of Dublin to help him to recite, because you must remember, he was blind, he couldn't read. And how he got his name, Zosimus, was Bishop Kyle, who was the Bishop of Raphoe, Dr. Kyle. He wrote a book, St. Mary of Egypt. And in the book it told the story that Zosimus found St. Mary in the wilderness in the 5th century. Zosimus was the holy man. And our Zosimus would stand around and he'd say, gather around me. Am I standing in a puddle? Is it wet? Are my feet wet? No, go on, Zosimus, you're in a lovely dry spot. Go on with your old yarn. Go on with Moses. Give us St. Mary of Egypt, Zosimus. And Zosimus then would stand and he'd raise his hat and put his hand up to his forehead as if he was in prayer. As he said himself afterwards, he used to be waiting for the gods to inspire him. And then after a few inaudible words, he'd start off. But there was something like 220 lines in the poem St. Mary of Egypt. And how Zosimus learned it and memorised it was wonderful. Now all his old friends came down this lane, around to his home in Fadlally. Stony Pockets, the dear man, only the fool, who they say was as wise as an owl. And you had Fat Mary, who was the prima donna of the Dublin streets. And then you had Peg the man. And they'd all go up to Bobby Tompkins up in Cannon Street and get his dray and go off out to Cullinswood. And Zosimus would recite, they'd all sing and dance and whistle. And this was the characters of this area of the Liberties of Dublin.
Poor old Dicey Riley, she has taken to the sup. Ah, poor old Dicey Riley, she will never give it up. For it's off each morning till I pop.
We're coming down to the Cross Puddle, or as the Dubliners used to say, the four corners of hell. It's a story about Dan Donnelly's wife was out one Holy Thursday doing the 7 chapels, and they say Dan was doing the 5 pubs, the four corners of hell and the capstan's bar. I'm not out in the wilds of the jungle. I'm standing in the centre of Cromwell's cabbage garden in the heart of the Liberties. When Cromwell came here in 1649, he stabled his horses on the high altar of St. Patrick's Cathedral, and his troops came over here and planted cabbage plants. Apparently it was their favourite vegetable. Now, when the Huguenots were run out of France, they came to the Liberty area with their weaving skills and their other trades. And they got a chapel, St. Mary's, in Patrick's Cathedral. They got portion of this land here as their burial ground. And this is where lie all the Huguenots who died down through the 1665, 1670, 1766, and on down through the years. This is a Huguenot graveyard. And this, I suppose, is where lie the remains of the Fontaines and the Montaignes, the Latouches, the Gilberts, the Lear Street, they were Huguenots, the Turpins, the Myrals, the Merciers. And this is where they were all buried. The people in Dublin used to say, I'm as honest as a Huguenot. That was a great honour and a great tribute to anyone. And I'm here in the Huguenot graveyard where all the honest Huguenots, men, women and children of Dublin lie to rest. May Lord have mercy on the Huguenots. St. Patrick's Cathedral is steeped in history. It was founded by John Comyn, a Benedictine monk who was appointed Archbishop of Dublin by King Henry II. The cathedral was built on the site of the old church of St. Patrick, the spot where St. Patrick himself converted the people of Dublin in 448. The cathedral was opened on St. Patrick's Day, 1192, nearly 800 years ago. It was dedicated to God, the Blessed Lady Mary and St. Patrick. Kevin Street Police Station stands today where John Comyn built his palace. It was first called the Palace of Colonia and later changed to the Palace of St. Sepulchres, thus given the liberty of the Archbishop of St. Sepulchres. The deanery is on the site of the old deanery with memories of all the great deans, in particular our own Dean Swift. Marsh's Library, founded by Archbishop Marsh, is the oldest public library in Ireland, dating back to the 1700s. The Ivy Trust was founded in 1890. The idea was to build dwellings for the artisan and working class, and the Ivy Trust did a fair job. In 1943 they stated that they had 808 dwellings, 28 shops, a hostel, the Ivy Hostel, with 508 beds. Up in Cromwell did 137 houses and a shop. They'd also a wash house for the people to wash their clothes in, to keep the vapour and the dampness out of the people's rooms, so they could do their washing in the wash house. And in 1915, the first Earl of Ivy opened a children's play centre, which when we were kids was called the Beano, where you got a mug of shell cocoa and a railway bun, because there was a curtain at every station. And of course, the most popular place of all, according to the children, the good old Ivy Bats. This is my favourite park. My mother used to come in here every day in our dinner hour. She told me one time that in Patrick's Park she'd only to close her eyes and she could see Thomas MacDonagh and Eamon Kent walking down the Ross Road to surrender after the Easter week rise in 1916. This is where she spent her dinner hour, having our visions and saying our prayers and doing our bit of knitting or our bit of reading. Whenever I come into Patrick's Park, I'm surrounded with visions, countless memories of men and ages. But out among all those characters, there's two men that always come into my mind whenever I walk around this old park. And the first man is James Clarence Mangan, the Dublin poet and nationalist, the young Irelander, the writer to the nation. I can see Mangan leaving the fever shed up in Inchicore and making his way down along Kilmainham and James's Street to his rooms up in Bride Street at the top here. I am being found dying there and being brought then up to the Meath Hospital to die. And the second man is Brendan Bean. Now Brendan's booked the Barstow by when he's coming home from the Barstow, and the ship is coming into Dublin, and he sees the mountains, the 2 Rock, the 3 Rock Capure. You have a beautiful view of the Dublin mountains from the corner of Bride Street at Patrick's Cathedral. And then Brendan went on to see the churches, the spires, St. Barnabas, Lardens O'Toole and Rathmines. Asher Brendan died a few paces away from where Clarence Mangan died, in the Meath Hospital. Well, Brendan Bean had the Dublin wit to the very end. When he was dying up in the Meath Hospital, there's a story told that a nun went in to visit him. And she was looking at him in the bed and she said, "Brendan, I'm praying for you." So he looked up at her and he said, "Thank you very much, Reverend Mother. May your son be a bishop."
Son, me Holly plays on the flute. He belongs to the Longford Street Band. 'Twould do your heart good for to see him march out when the band goes to Dollymount Strand. In the park on the Sunday I quite couldn't dash. All the neighbours look on in surprise at me grand paisley shawl and me bonnet so tall, 'twould dazzle the sight of your eyes. You may travel from Clare to the county Kildare, from Drogheda right back by McCruam. But where would you see a fine widow like me? Biddy Mulligan, the pride of the Coam. Me boys, Biddy Mulligan, the pride of the Coam.